Silent Hill 2, the official novel, written by Sadamu Yamashita, generously translated into English by Emily, Lady Ducky, Fitch. Chapter 5, To the Deepest Depths. Part 2. It seemed the deeper James descended into the prison, the more decayed and ruined the surroundings became. Here, the grimy walls were stained in various dark reddish shades, and the floor was littered with broken glass and other debris. The small space looked as though it had been thoroughly destroyed. On the far wall was an elevator, its door sitting wide open. So this place goes deeper still. He didn't expect something this far underground in the ruins of an old prison to still be working, but it was worth trying. Once aboard, James pressed a button, and the doors, which turned out to be metal bars rather than the standard elevator doors, slid closed. The elevator began to descend. Looking through the bars as the elevator seemed to endlessly fall, he saw a bare stone wall pass by, like the shaft was carved out of bedrock. He finally arrived at a passageway that looked more like the inside of a building. Compared to the previous floors, this place was in good shape. Even the plaster that clung to the walls was intact, rather than scattered across the floor in ripped up pieces. Along the way, the passage branched off into many other directions, each leading to a dead end with stairs leading further down. It was starting to look like a maze. A maze of the mind? Or a maze to bewilder the one who would try to uncover the mysteries of Silent Hill. James took a careful look down one of the staircases, then climbed all the way to the floor below. As he stepped into the hallway, he heard the distinctive sound of metal rattling underfoot, and the solid floor turned into a wire mesh. More troubling were the sounds of the creatures moving underneath the wire. They were the same monsters who attacked him from under the floor on the tunnel in Saul Street. Instinctively, James turned to retreat back up the stairs. He recalled how those things had given him hell when he tried running through the tunnel. Even now, his feet were still sore after that dangerous encounter. Something was approaching from the depths of the murky passage. Something with footsteps heavy enough to make a violent clash as it walked over the chain-link floor. Against his better judgment, James turned to find a grim, giant figure emerge into the light. It was the Red Pyramid Monster. There was no sound of a knife being dragged across the floor. Instead, the creature wielded a long, thick spear. It was exactly like the painting back in the Historical Society. James was trembling with fear. The mere thought of being impaled by that spear filled him with a sweet terror, stronger even than the feelings that still haunted him of hatred and vengeance for Maria's death. Turning around, he dashed back up the stairs and into the hallway, sprinting as fast as his feet could carry him until he reached another set of stairs. The intense dread of the pursuing monster was like a torch held to his back, only encouraging him to run faster. James had no idea how far he continued through the labyrinth. He just had to escape, no matter where this path took him. Whether that destination was heaven or hell or something only God knew. James advanced blindly through the maze. Any monsters foolish enough to stand in his way were blown away with a rifle shot. Before long, the Red Pyramid Monsters seemed to have fallen behind, but he didn't stop running. Running down stairs, more stairs, and even longer stairs, until he found himself in an unexpected place. It was a room, divided in half by iron bars. On the other side of the bars was a cell, and in that cell was a woman. Maria! James could barely believe his eyes. She was killed by the pyramid monster in the hospital. He saw it. So how could she be sitting in front of him now? Maria! You really are alive. Aren't you injured? Are you all right? I'm quite all right, thank you, Maria shrugged. Of course, now I'm stuck in here, but fortunately I wasn't hurt. I'm so glad you were okay. When you couldn't make it to the elevator, I thought for sure you were dead." "Elevator? What are you talking about?" Maria tilted her head, a puzzled expression on her face. James was just as confused as she was. "It wasn't even that long ago. Don't you remember?" Maria sighed. "James, honey, did something happen to you after we got separated in that long tunnel? Perhaps you're mistaking me for someone else. You always were so forgetful. I wonder if you remember that time at the hotel." "Separated? Always were?" "Maria, what are you saying? You were sure you packed everything, but you forgot that videotape. I wonder if it's still there." "How do you know that? That's—" James was bewildered. Those were memories that belonged only to him and Mary. Surely this was more than just a woman's intuition at work here. "I'm not your Mary." "Right. Maria, aren't you?" "I can be whoever you want me to be. Either way, I'm me. I'm alive. I'm real. See?" Maria's pale arms reached from between the bars and caressed James's cheek. Her fingertips were soft, warm, smooth, and like smoke. James was transfixed. "Hey, come and get me. I can't do anything through these bars, much less talk any sense into you." I'll be right there. Just stay where you are." As much as he didn't want to leave her for even a second, James tore himself away, assuring her again that he would come back for her. He left Maria behind and returned to the stairs. There was another entrance to Maria's cell, but he had no clue how to get to it in the maze. Either way, he'd have to find his way around this place sooner or later. As for breaking down the door and freeing Maria, he'd figure that out when he got there. $150. For $150 a week, I work at my tiresome job, in a place that reeks of sizzling, burning meat. It is a stench as disgusting and bestial as the lust of men. With their broad grins and vulgar laughter, they stare at the waitress's uniform skirts, their gazes coiling around their legs as if to taste them. The shameless hands of male customers. No matter how many times I smack them away, they still persist, grabbing at me, stroking the curve of my hips. Before I know it, they've changed into the hands of my father and my brother. It's depressing. It makes me so miserable. How many times have I held a knife to my wrists, but hesitated? Stood at the edge of a rooftop, but couldn't jump. Swallow a bottle of sleeping pills only to force them back up again. It's like buying a mountain of candy and forcing myself to devour it all, eating to spit it back out, and spitting it out to eat more. The endless cycle of binging and purging could go on for days. Going outside is so troublesome. Some days I just crawl into bed and never come out. It's so hard to sleep at night that I'm constantly hounded by drowsiness. Nevertheless, I lie completely still in uneasy silence, wary of the sound of footsteps approaching the door. Tonight, as I await the abuse I receive every night, my anxiety grows until it turns into crushing despair. I can't endure this kind of panic. I'm too afraid to look in the mirror, too afraid to face that ugly thing that doesn't look like me anymore. I can't do anything. I don't care about anything. I only spend my days trembling and dreading the arrival of the night. Every day is that empty. Eventually, memories started going missing, swept away by the vacant flow of time. But there is one thing I've learned. While wandering through an unknown town, I discovered that there's someone else living inside me. A person neither man nor woman, who is healthy and energetic, and yet longs for death. I don't know the boundaries anymore. Is that person me? Am I that person? Who was I to begin with? I want to die. I want to die. That is my one and only wish, but it's a wish that's proven difficult to obtain. I want to die, and yet I'm forced to keep on living. I don't want to see anyone, men, women, anyone. Those people who are always meddling with their unwanted kind words. Keep at it. You can do it. We'd all miss you so much if you weren't here anymore. It's like touching an open wound. I just can't stomach that friendly but completely insincere attitude everyone seems to have. I want to die. Nothing you say will ever change my mind. For all your consolation, it's not like any of you would willingly take my place. Such irresponsible people, none of you understand me. Not even Mama. Even the doctor from that faraway hospital doesn't understand me. After everything I tried to tell him during the examination, all he did was prescribe more drugs. The side effects were torturous, and it soon became too much. I knew that if I got any worse, I'd have to be admitted. What did you want me to do? It's impossible. Everything is impossible. Even back then, I knew none of them could save me. I knew that eventually I'd be left with no choice. And now I know there's only one thing I can do. At least that much is still possible. Trying to kill myself, but always meeting with failure. It's all because of them. I can never forget what my father and brother have done. Stop it. Stop looking at me with your filthy eyes. Don't touch me. No! Angela sat up, pulled from her restless sleep by her own screams. She anxiously looked around the room. The place strangely resembled a room from her childhood home, but she was disgusted to find that the walls seemed to be made out of raw meat, dripping with fresh blood. In several places there were holes in the flesh-like walls, where something cylindrical was continuously coming in and going out. The entire area was filled with a raw, unpleasant smell. Suddenly, she could sense someone creeping closer, crawling across the floor, panting with wild excitement. An unclothed figure approached her bed. A sharp sound tore through the darkness as something flew past James's face, grazing his cheek in the process. Startled, James fell backwards into the shallow water, only to see a spear protruding mere inches from where he had been standing. Even in this filthy place that reeked like a sewage ditch, that monster still relentlessly followed him. The Red Pyramid. From his place on the ground, James fired at the creature with his rifle. With a power incomparable to that of the handgun, he buried bullet after bullet into that monster's thick chest, until it too fell into the water. However, it was hardly a fatal injury. Acting as if the bullet wounds were mere scratches, the pyramid monster began slowly dragging itself back to its feet. Damn it! He didn't have time to deal with this monster now. Maria was waiting for him. He retreated further into the maze, kicking up water as he frantically ran. Jumping onto a ladder that caught his eye, he climbed until he reached the passage at the top. Looking around, he realized that he was at the spot where he started. At least this was a little bit of good luck. No! Stop it! Daddy, please! James heard a shriek echoing through the hall. The woman's voice seemed to have come from within a room on the far end of the hallway. Could it be Maria? Opening the door, James found himself in what appeared to be someone's house. The place was staged like a living room. There was even a television in the corner. But aside from the television, everything in the bizarre room was wrapped with squirming flesh. What was a room like this doing far underground? Before he even had time to think, James became aware of the presence of a monster he'd never encountered before. Its figure was made up of what appeared to be two entangled human bodies covering the frame of a bed, its arms and legs extending over the sides, acting as bedposts. With its makeshift legs, it slowly crawled across the floor. It rose from its four-legged stance like a bear trying to intimidate an enemy. The creature howled from its two distorted mouths, giving a warning cry. It drew nearer, its festering flesh quivering, attempting to crush James under the weight of its body. James quickly turned his gun on the monster, firing rapidly with the slide-action rifle. The monster fell to the floor, screeching in agony before it grew still. Angela was crouching in the corner of the room, staring with a blank, expressionless face. James was hardly surprised to see her in such a strange place. After all, he'd run into Eddie down here too. If they really were nothing but products of his delusion, then meeting them anywhere wouldn't be out of the ordinary. Or perhaps they were real people just like James. Pathetic, pitiable people that were trapped and at the mercy of Silent Hill. "Are you all right? You're not hurt, are you?" James called over to her. All at once her expression changed from apathy to rage. She jumped to her feet and began relentlessly kicking the unmoving monster, spurred on by a combination of hatred and sorrow. Just as she seemed to be growing tired, she grabbed the television, raised it over her head, and hurled it onto the monster's corpse. "Angela, calm down! Don't order me around," Angela snapped back. I'm not trying to order you around. Well then, what do you want?" "Oh, I see. You're trying to be nice to me, right? I know what you're up to. It's always the same. You're only after one thing." "No, it's not like that. You don't have to lie. Go ahead and say it. You could just force me. Beat me up like he always did. You don't care about anyone else anyway, you disgusting pig." "Angela." James took a step closer, placing his hand on her shoulder in an effort to comfort her. However, he was met with a harsh rejection. "Don't touch me. You make me sick." She glared at him, her eyes filled with contempt, and her mouth becoming a frosty smile. "Hey, James, you said your wife died, didn't you?" "Yes, she was ill." "Oh, really? Are you sure you just didn't want her around anymore? I bet you found someone else," Angela said as she left the room, scornful laughter accompanying her sharp words. James silently watched as she slipped into the darkness. He was as offended as one would expect after hearing someone insult Mary like that. Still, it seemed like Angela had had bad experiences in the past with men. Even if he offered to protect her, she would only refuse. After Angela departed, James did the same, eager to hurry to Maria. Fortunately, the hallway he entered into was hardly confusing enough to be considered a maze. He checked every door along the way, looking in the rooms for anything that might lead him to Maria's cell. One room appeared to be a morgue, as it held a sizable collection of executed bodies. The prison used to be a POW camp, but though it continued to be in use, the conditions hadn't improved at all. Continuing onward through the long, narrow hallway, James came upon a metal door. Considering the apparent need for security, this door must lead to a cell. He peeked into the little room from a small window. "Maria!" James tapped the door gleefully. "Maybe I can break the lock with my rifle." Such worries became useless as the door turned out to be unlocked. He swung the door open, half expecting a rain of grateful kisses from Maria, who'd been trapped in here for so long. But he received no such warm welcome. "Maria?" Stepping into the cell, James looked around as a troubled frown came to his face. Something wasn't right. A faint odor hung over the room. Was it blood? Maria was lying on a small bed, her blouse and the mattress both soaked in red. The stains spread across her chest, proof that she had vomited a large amount of blood. "What the—" James hurried to Maria, kneeling beside her bed. "Maria! Maria!" Even as he lightly shook her, desperate for any kind of response, it was clear that she was already dead. I don't understand. How could this have happened?" Once again, Maria was lost. Only this time she was truly dead. Grief hit James like a knife to the heart. "Mary." The sight of Maria's familiar but lifeless face brought the name of his dead wife to his lips. It was just like before. When Mary died, Oppressive memories swirled in his mind. Chaotic, vague, dark memories. Slowly, James rose to his feet, feeling like little more than an empty husk of a soul. He gazed vacantly over Maria's lifeless body. On closer inspection, he noticed a hole in her chest that looked to be a gunshot wound. This was no accidental death, and she certainly didn't die of illness. But then, who killed Maria? Who would have a reason to shoot her to death? It didn't take long to reach a conclusion. In fact, it hardly took any thought at all. Besides James, there were only two people wandering through the labyrinth of this old prison: Angela and Eddie. Eddie was the only one with a gun. But was it him? Could he really have done this?
"Killing a person's so easy."
Eddie had said it himself, and with that creepy smile on his face. Who other than a sick murderer would say such a thing? Didn't he also say something before about being chased by the police? James left Maria to search for Eddie. He wasn't consciously aware of any desire to avenge Maria's death, nor did he harbor any hatred towards Eddie. He just wanted to know why. Why did he kill Maria? Why did the image of Eddie overlap with himself in his mind? Where am I? The hallway led out into a large open space. The ground underfoot felt like firm soil, but it was unlikely that he had exited the maze to end up outdoors. By shining around the halo of the light from his flashlight, he confirmed the presence of 4 walls enclosing the space. The only other thing the light could find was a large cluster of stones that rose from the earth. They were all gravestones. The place that awaited him at the end of the twisting labyrinth was a cemetery. Civil War captives, executed prisoners, and countless other people must have been buried in this place. One grave bore a familiar name: Walter Sullivan. The name that came up on the old newspaper article from Woodside Apartments' dumpster. James was strangely attracted to it, but for some reason, it made him feel like someone was groping around inside his head. As he thought these strange things, James looked around at more of the names carved into the stones. He nearly froze in shock when he came across 2 familiar names: Eddie Dombrowski and Angela Orozco. At this point, someone still could claim that this was a coincidence. However, there was one more name: James Sunderland. The 3 tombstones were accompanied by the gaping holes of 3 open graves. They sat silently like mouths of hungry beasts waiting to swallow up the dead. Angela, Eddie, and James. Maybe this was Eddie's idea of a joke? Surely someone as disturbed as he would find something morbid like this so funny. Maybe this was proof of his intentions to kill everyone, including himself. Or maybe he was just having fun harassing everyone. But if either of those ideas were true, why didn't he make up a grave for Maria? Didn't he kill her? James's grave appeared to be different from the other 2. When he shone a light into it, he could see the hole was quite a bit deeper than the others. Did it lead to another location? Perhaps it only led to the land of the dead. James stepped into his own grave. The path from the grave led not to another maze, but rather to a straight corridor. Soon James came to a heavy iron door. The second he stepped through the door, his body was enveloped by a sudden chill that turned his breath white. The room was a freezer, illuminated with pale fluorescent lights. James had found the person he was looking for. "Eddie, what are you doing here?" James called out, holding his rifle casually, but ready to use at a moment's notice.
"What does it look like?"
Eddie grinned.
"He was always giving me shit. You fat, disgusting piece of shit. You make me sick. Don't you dare show your ugly face around here."
The look on Eddie's face turned into a dark, twisted smile.
"Maybe he was right. Maybe I am nothing but a fat, disgusting piece of shit. But you know what? It doesn't matter if you're smart, good at sports, pretty, or ugly. It's all the same once you're dead. From now on, if anyone makes fun of me, I'll kill him. At least a corpse is more useless than I am."
He was acting even nuttier than he'd been before in the cafeteria. "Yeah, Eddie, whatever you say," James nodded compliantly, trying not to anger him. However, this only served to provoke Eddie further.
"I knew it. You too. You're just like him, James."
"Eddie, I didn't mean anything."
"Don't bother. I understand. You've been laughing at me all along, haven't you? Ever since we first met. I'll kill you, James."
Before Eddie could pull the trigger, James fired his rifle, purposefully missing. His threat proved successful as Eddie turned to flee into an adjacent room. However, James didn't immediately follow him. He was curious about what had set Eddie off. But the thing James really wanted to know was whether or not he really killed Maria. Given the situation, he wasn't likely to get a straight answer to either of those questions, especially since Eddie's rage was now centered on him. If James walked through those doors, there was no doubt that only one of them would come out alive. Crazy or not, Eddie was still a human being. It wasn't the same as dealing with another monster. But still, where else did he have to go? He couldn't climb up through the hole back into the graveyard. He could only move forward and meet his destiny, to be reunited with Mary. Still a bit unsure, but prepared for the worst, he opened the door. The room Eddie had escaped into was a spacious, refrigerated warehouse. Many butchered slabs of meat hung throughout the chamber, suspended from the ceiling by frosted hooks.
"Do you know what it does to you, James?"
Eddie's voice came from inside the room. He was hiding somewhere.
"When you're hated, picked on, spit on? Do you have any idea how I feel? That's why I ran away after killing the dog. Ran away like a scared little girl. Yeah, I killed that dog. It was fun. Then he came after me. I shot him too. Right in the leg. He cried more than that dog."
A gunshot rang through the warehouse, accompanied by a nearby sound of splattering meat. Eddie spoke again.
"He's gonna have a hard time playing football on what's left of that knee."
"Cut it out, Eddie," James shouted from his hiding place behind a slab of meat. "What makes you think you can just start killing people because you feel like it?"
"Don't get all holy on me, James. This town called you too. And you and me are the same. We're the kind of scum who can't even face good people."
2 more shots were fired.
"Now, let's party,"
Eddie shouted in a voice filled with vicious glee. His insane laughter echoed through the warehouse as he began to fire rapidly. The shots seemed to be random, but they were definitely aimed at James. Eddie knew where he was hiding. He truly was trying to kill James. Damn it! Where is he shooting from? James was trapped by the flying bullets, with only a shield of meat standing between him and certain death. The slab of meat shook under the shower of bullets until it was ripped from its hook and fell onto the floor, leaving James defenseless. Suddenly, the gunfire ceased. The room fell eerily silent, save for the creaking sounds of swinging meat. This was his chance. His opponent was probably in the middle of reloading his weapon. Not wasting another second, James rushed back towards the entrance of the refrigerated warehouse, planning to retreat into the previous room and block the door somehow. He didn't want to stick around long enough to get himself killed, and he knew that he wouldn't be able to shoot a human as unflinchingly as he would a monster.
Freeze!
James stopped in his tracks at the sound of the commanding voice. While he wasn't paying attention, Eddie had snuck up on him and was now standing only a few steps away.
Ha ha ha! Freeze! You get it? 'Cause we're in a freezer. Man, that's funny,
Eddie said between childish bouts of laughter.
So, do you regret making fun of me now? Are you even sorry? How about getting on your knees and begging for your life, just like I always did? Why aren't you apologizing? You should be licking the damn floor and begging for mercy. Aren't you ashamed?
Eddie was sobbing now, tears falling down his face.
Die.
He pressed his finger to the trigger. James counterattacked, reflexively firing his rifle. If he was going to die anyway, at least he could have one last act of revenge. A single shot rang through the frozen warehouse. Eddie was the one who should have shot first. However, he collapsed, falling among the droplets of blood that sprayed across the floor.
Eddie? Eddie?
James looked down, too stunned to move. Did I really shoot him?
Damn, that hurts,
Eddie moaned. He was alive, but just barely.
I went and screwed up. You win, I guess.
James hurried to his side. Just hold on, okay? I'll get some help, I promise.
It's no good, James. There's no saving me. Would you just finish it off? I can't do it myself. All out of bullets.
You want me to... You mean you really want to die?
What's it matter? We're all good as dead anyway. You saw it too. Those graves. That's our fate.
Is that why you killed Maria?
Maria? Maria? Who's that? I don't know, but just kill me already. Hurry, please. It hurts.
Eddie's consciousness was quickly fading, and with it went the pain. He smiled. He was finally free. He didn't have to run away anymore. What a shitty life his was. All he ever wanted was to eat something delicious or watch something funny on TV. That's all. But no one would ever just leave him alone. Dirty. Disgusting. He didn't mind that girls wouldn't give him the time of day. Fat, stupid, scum. It was the constant bullying that he couldn't stand. Especially him. That bastard from school. All through high school, he got his kicks by torturing me any chance he got. Even after graduation, he still wouldn't leave me alone. So From out of nowhere, a pack of dogs gathered. The large dogs with saliva-covered fangs bared, surrounding Eddie in his dying moments. The hideous figures ripped at his torn stomach, pulling out his intestines as they snarled fiercely. They were all the same as the dog he killed back in his hometown. He had taken up his father's rifle, shot the man who had caused him so much suffering in the leg, and then killed his pet dog for good measure. And now, here they were, as if they had been here in Silent Hill all along, just waiting to ambush him. One dog became 4, still holding a grudge for their unfair deaths, chasing Eddie wherever he went. From him they appeared, to tear at his flesh and rip him to pieces. Even now, this late in the game.
You stupid dog. You come back now to bite me after all this time?
Eddie laughed. With a carefree grin lingering on his face, he died. After witnessing Eddie's last moments, James stood. He looked down at his hands. They were covered in blood. These hands were drenched in the invisible blood of sin.
I killed a human being.
His body trembled. His mind froze.
I killed